Focus, sponsored by the League of Women Voters South County. A discussion show which will shine a spotlight on current issues of interest to the public. Today's show, Voting Laws and Issues in Rhode Island, 2018. The vote is a power. Understand what it means and what it can do for your country. Carrie Cat Chapman, founder, League of Women Voters, 1920. Guests, Cathy Brayman, Deputy Town Clerk, Westerly, Rhode Island. Dale S. Holberton, Town Clerk, South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Robert Rapoza, Executive Director, Rhode Island Board of Elections. Moderator, Nina Rosamondo, Vice President, League of Women Voters, South County. The League of Women Voters South County is a multi-issue, nonpartisan organization. Its key mission is to provide its members, as well as the general public, with information and educational services on elections and on current public policy issues through grassroots actions, citizen education, and advocacy, including voter services, voter registration drives, and candidate forums. The League always welcomes new members, and membership is open to any citizen of the United States, male or female. Our League includes the towns of Charlestown, Hopkinton, Narragansett, South Kingstown, Richmond, and Westerly. We meet every second Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. at the Dime Bank Community Room located at 131 Franklin Street, Route 1, Westerly, Rhode Island.
Welcome. Welcome to part 2 of Voting Issues and Laws in Rhode Island. I'd like to welcome my guests. My right here, Cathy Brayman, Deputy Town Clerk from Westerly, Bob Rapoza, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Board of Elections, and Dale Holberton, Town Clerk from South Kingstown. Let's start. As you know, part 1 featured Secretary of State Nellie Gorbea, and she talked about the responsibilities of Secretary of State's office, as well as some of the laws that have passed recently, as well as some of the laws that she hopes may pass in this legislative session. So some of what we're talking about will be a repeat, but hopefully you, in your different positions from the Secretary of State, will have a slightly different perspective. So I'd like to start with you, Mr. Rapoza. As Executive Director of the Board of Elections, I would guess that many people in the state of Rhode Island have no clue as to what the Board of Elections does. So if you would start with who is on the Board of Elections, how are they selected, who's on the board, who are staff? Let's just start with that.
The Board of Elections is an autonomous board in the state of Rhode Island. The board is comprised of 7 board members. The board members, we have a chairman, Richard Dubois, vice chairwoman, Diane Medeiros. We have board members, Stephen Erickson, Isidore Ramos, David Scholes, and Richard Pierce, and William West. They are all appointed to serve up to 9 years. The terms are defined by state law. When they are appointed by the governor at the time of their appointment. They then will receive consent from the Senate, and ultimately they are sworn in by the Supreme Court in the state of Rhode Island. The staff, we have 12 staff members, including myself. We have 5 members of the election division. There are 4 staff members of the campaign finance division, and we have 2 administrative aides.
Okay, so the Secretary of State described what the responsibilities are for her office. Would you describe what are the responsibilities of the Board of Elections as different from what the Secretary of State's office is responsible for?
The Board of Elections has the ultimate authority of elections in the state of Rhode Island. We oversee all the 39 boards of canvassers, and we are responsible for the deployment and the conduct of all elections that fall under Title 17 of Rhode Island election laws within the state. We are responsible for the voting equipment, the testing of the equipment. We are responsible for the training of the poll workers, which numbers over 3,000 statewide. We are also responsible for the selection of all the polling places in which the voting is conducted. And the board also is responsible for hearing complaints that may arise during the course of an election. And they are also responsible for the oversight of elections in the 39 communities.
Okay, so the Board of Elections is really primarily focused on the election itself, not on the voter rolls and making sure that those are accurate. That really falls on the Secretary of State's office. Is that correct?
Excuse me. The Secretary of State's office is responsible for the voter rolls, but the Secretary of State is responsible for the voter rolls according to Rhode Island state law and rules and regulations that are developed and adopted by the State Board of Elections.
Okay, and after the board has counted all the votes, the Secretary of State is responsible for certifying those votes. Is that correct?
The Board of Elections certifies the votes, and then we send the results to the Secretary of State. And those are for state races only. If a local community such as Westerly or South Kingstown is having an election, they certify their own results.
I see. Okay. All right. So now we have two clerks from different towns in South County. I have no idea whether or not there are uniform rules. So these questions go to both of you. You can take turns answering. Our viewers, I think, would like to know, what are the responsibilities of town clerks in terms of just the elections? What is your charge to do? Cathy, would you like to start about Westerly?
Sure. We set up the polling locations with the approval of the Board of Elections for the selection of the polling locations. We set them up. We recruit the poll workers for the elections. We maintain the voter rolls. We conduct voter registration drives. We process the day-to-day voter registrations with additions, changes, removals of the voter rolls to maintain accurate rolls.
We advertise the elections, we post warrants for the elections, we do all of that is in accordance with state law. So many days prior to an election, we have to place advertisements, or we have to certify the voting lists also prior to the election through the Board of Canvassers. They certify the voter rolls. In South Kingstown, professional staff maintains those rolls, but the Board of Canvassers reviews it and certifies it for the election.
Okay, so that goes to the Board of Canvassers, my next question. I'm really trying to cover all of the levels of elected. The Secretary of State is the only elected person. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In the whole process. So there's the Secretary of State, there's the Board of Elections, and then in each town there is a clerk responsible to relate both to the Board of Elections as well as the Board of Canvassers. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit. How are the Board of Canvassers chosen?
In South Kingstown, if there's a vacancy on the Board of Canvassers, the town council will request a list of 5 from each of the party chairmen. And from those lists, the town council will appoint a member to the Board of Canvassers. You cannot have more than 2 people from one party on the Board of Canvassers, and their term is a 6-year term.
So how many people do you have on the Board
in
of
South Kingstown, we have 3 people on the Board of Canvassers. You are allowed to have alternates, however, we do not have alternate members.
Westerly does have alternates. We have 2 alternate members, and a similar process is done in Westerly. We contact the chairman of the board for whatever party the vacancy is, but we also, it's all vacancies for all boards and commissions are listed on the town's agenda, and so anyone is able to apply for the position of a Board of Canvassers
I was
member.
going to ask, if an increasing number of people are not registered in a party and are unaffiliated, do they get considered for a position on the Board of Canvassers?
They would have to be, because it's a bipartisan board, so they have to be a member of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in order to be on the board.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so in general, how do the 2 of you and your fellow clerks throughout the state relate to the Board of Elections?
The Board of Elections really is our, the Secretary of State's office both. We collaborate with them to run the elections. They are our leaders, actually. They mandate what we have to do, and they give us training sessions throughout the year. They train, if we have new staff members come on board, they hold trainings for them. They help us out a great deal. They approve our voting locations. We recruit poll workers. However, they help us train them and conduct all of the training sessions.
Mm-hmm. So, Bob, let me ask you, it sounds like one of the big functions of the Board of Elections is training. What kind of training does the Board of Canvassers in each town get? Because they are, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit in terms of the questions, but I know they are really the front line for making sure that the voter rolls are accurate.
That is correct. They are responsible, each Board of Canvassers, and we have 39, one for each city and town, they are responsible for their own community's voter registration rolls. The Board of Elections will train the Board of Canvassers on election matters, how we have rules and regs for voter registration, rules that they follow to register a new voter or change their address or their name or whatever. We also will have training sessions for the local boards on how to process mail ballots at election time. We also will assist them, as Dale mentioned, with the selection of polling places, because it is definitely it's important that when a polling place is selected, that the location is located within the Senate and the rep district of that community, so that a voter is not disenfranchised. They can go to a polling place that is near their residence. Now, when you get into cities, it is broken down one level further, where polling places also have to be in the respective ward. Mm-hmm. Westerly and South Kingstown do not have wards. They just have Senate and rep districts. We will make sure, as I said, that the polling place is located within those boundaries. We also are the agency responsible for training the poll workers that they select at election time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. There's been a lot of confusion and articles in the newspaper and on television about maintaining the accuracy of voter rolls. There's been a federal election commission concerned with that, and so on and so forth. So what is the specific process? Can you tell us what is the specific process required by federal and state law to remove names from the rolls?
To remove a name from the rolls, it's actually quite difficult to remove a name from the rolls. There are a few ways. One, of course, is if the person is deceased, and the Secretary of State's office has, they work in conjunction with the Department of vital statistics in Rhode Island. So they obtain records, death records, notifications, and they send those out to the 39 cities and towns for us to remove a voter if they're deceased. In Westerly, we have the hospital, so we get the death records. We can remove a voter by seeing the death record or by notification in the local newspaper. All of the cities and towns in an off year do what's called a national change of address, where the Secretary of State sends the entire voting list to the United States Postal Service. They match up the two addresses, what we have as a voter registration address and what the post office has as a mailing address. We are sent a list of those people, those addresses, and we send out 2 notices, one to what they're registered at, one to what the post office has, along with a voter registration form and information that for them to sign and tell us that they no longer live in Westerly, or they've moved out of state, or they've changed their address within the town. We have to have a signature in order to remove a voter.
So that means they have to reply.
That's correct. If they do not reply within a certain number of days, they're given a deadline, then they're put on what's called an inactive list. They remain inactive for 2 federal elections. If they have not notified us or voted or changed their address, there's been no activity for 2 federal elections, then we remove the voter through a process of sending them another notification, even though we know we're going to receive it back, more than likely undeliverable. But at that point, the voter can be removed from the voting list.
Okay, so 2 federal elections means 4 years,
4
is that
years,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay,
That's
and
correct.
that is the same
It's the same
across.
as South Kingstown also. We also check our probate records. The jury commission's challenge is another way. If they don't,
What is that?
if they, jury commissioner, if they send out a notice for a person to serve on jury and they don't respond, or their mailing comes back as undeliverable, we send out notices to them and ask them to respond, and it's the same process as with the NCOA.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, too, when a person does register to vote, we send out what's called an acknowledgement notice, and it's just to verify that they actually do live and receive mail at the address that they provide us with. If that is returned back to us as undeliverable, again, another notice is sent out. They're put on an inactive list, and they remain inactive for 2 federal elections, then they're removed.
What happens if people use a post office box or a UPS box?
And they can use it as a mailing address, but they have to be able to receive an acknowledgement notice at an address provided. They have to provide us with a street address.
Or they go on the inactive list. So what would happen is when they went to the polling place, they would have to fill out what is called as an affirmation card, which would come back, and we would go through the same process over again, whereas we would send out the acknowledgement card again, and then if they only received mail at their post office box and not at their street address, each election they would go through the affirmation process at the polling
Okay,
location.
so you have to have a physical address in order to be registered to vote.
I believe the only
Absolutely.
place they don't have to have that in the state of Rhode Island is, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, is New Shoreham.
New Shoreham.
Where?
New Shoreham, Block Island.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So from each of your perspectives, talk a little bit about, let's talk first about online voter registration. What is it? How does it work? And do you think it's working? Because after all, it used to be that you had to go to town hall and fill out a card and so on. Now we can do it online. How does that work?
It works, it works fine. It's an easy way for a person to register to vote, to change their address, to change their party affiliation, provided that that there is a signature on file, that they have a driver's license already, that their signature is there. If it's their first time registering and they don't have a driver's license and they don't have a signature on file, they can't register online.
Okay.
We have to have a signature.
So they have to be in the system somehow
Correct.
already.
Yes.
The
All right.
DMV system.
through
Pardon
the
me?
DM.
The DMV system.
It's the
That's where they will get the signature from.
Okay. So whatever documents are provided in order to get a driver's license are already on file, as well as their signature. So it really is not online registration for everybody.
They have to have a driver's license.
Right.
That's
What about people who don't have a driver's license?
They can
Okay.
fill out a voter registration form, which is the way maybe 20% of our voters now access voter registration. Majority of our voters do online or through the DMV system, but there are a small percentage that do a paper voter registration form, which they can download from the Board of Elections website or the Secretary of State's website, and many communities also have our voter registration form on their website, where the prospective voter can download it, complete it, and send it into their Board of Canvassers or hand carry it.
They can come into the town hall, pick up a form. They can call us. We can mail them a form. So
Okay,
there's
so
other
there are lots of
ways.
ways.
Ample opportunity, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Now, my understanding is that there is now automatic voter registration at the DMV.
It is not active as of the moment. It
Oh,
is still
really?
in the development process. The General Assembly passed the law that would allow Rhode Island to have automatic voter registration. Will become effective when the administrator of the DMV is satisfied that the process will work correctly, and at that point, the automatic voter registration will begin being an active process for voters under rules and regulations that are proposed and adopted by the Board of Elections.
Do you have any idea for a start date?
I do not.
You do not. Okay, so it's my sense that people think that's already in existence, so you're saying it's not.
It is not as of
Okay.
right now.
All right, now on to actual voting. When Secretary Gorbea was here for part one of our series, she said that when she came into office, the legislature voted for new voting machines. So let's talk a little bit about the voting machines and other kinds of technology that you have in place.
The Secretary is absolutely correct. When she became the Secretary of State, she was able to procure the purchase of new voting equipment, which we used for the very first time in 2016. This voting equipment went from optical scan to digital scanning. We always use paper ballots, so we still have a paper ballot system. The new system, the digital scan, scans the ballot when it's being accepted by the tabulator, and it takes a picture of the ballot. None of our ballots have numbers on them. There's no way to tie a ballot to a voter, but it is a benefit after the election with the digital scan because we can print out a report which helps the cities and towns to tabulate their write-ins. The new equipment also has a feature where after the results for that precinct have been tallied, it sends the results wirelessly to the Board of Elections so that the results will be shown on our website. We do update our website every 15 minutes, if not sooner. So we have real-time results in the state of Rhode Island on election night. The optical scan also in 2017, the Board of Elections had legislation introduced, which was passed, which now will allow us to send more than one voting machine in 2018 to a polling place, which will assist the process for the voter to go through the polling place more effectively and efficiently. In 2018, we are looking forward to the implementation of electronic poll books. Poll pads When the voter goes in the past, they would sign a paper ballot application. After the supervisors or the poll workers put their label onto the piece of paper, the voter would sign it, and then it would be initialed by the 2 supervisors that were assisting the voter. In 2018, we are now providing electronic poll books. The poll books are preloaded with the voter files, the final canvas from each of the 39 cities and towns. Every poll pad lists every voter in the state of Rhode Island. So if you were to show up at a polling place that was not your polling place and you belong somewhere else, and we'll just say in Westerly, for example, when the poll workers scanned your driver's license, they would then tell you if you belong there. They would have you sign where they would initial. You would then receive your ballot. But if you were in the wrong location, they would then tell you where you should be going to vote on election day and will direct you with directions to get there. The benefit of the poll pad is we now will be eliminating a lot of paper, and after the election, previously every city and town was responsible for scanning in the barcodes from all those paper ballot applications that I mentioned. Now it's an electronic feed, so all the precinct voters that voted on election day will be automatically transferred to election history that is contained in the central voter registration system. We started using the electronic poll pads.
That's impressive.
We are very
great.
excited.
It really is.
We are very excited. So between the new voting equipment, the use of the electronic poll pads, and we still have the AutoMark, which is a device that is required by the federal government to be in each polling place that can assist any voter to help them through the process of voting at the polls on election day. So we have 3 initiatives at the polling place that makes the experience for our voters a pleasant one, and one that we hope that they will utilize more and more in the future.
The voters will see something a little different when they go to the polling location too, beginning in 2018. Because of the poll pads, they will no longer have to go to like A to C, and the alphabet's not going to be broken up where they need to go into their particular line. They'll be able to go to any supervisor polling location because the entire list is on everyone's poll pad. So they'll be able to check in much easier. It's a fast process. They have their driver's license.
Speed things up then.
Absolutely.
It will speed things up, exactly.
Right. And that's why we had the law change to add additional voting machines, because the check-in process will be quicker. By providing more than one voting machine, that will also assist with the efficiency of the poll.
Now, my understanding is that they passed something, this has to do more with, I guess, the integrity of the vote. They passed a post-audit piece of legislation. Describe what that is, because again, people seem to be concerned about, first, are the voter rolls accurate? And then, is the vote itself accurate?
Let me give you a little background. Before the election, the Board of Elections tests each and every voting machine that is sent out to the 419 precincts in the state of Rhode Island. We test each machine, we then zero out the test, and when it leaves, it is set for election day. The post-election audit, which was passed by the General Assembly in September of 2017, requires the state board to perform a risk-limiting audit, mandatory beginning with the April 2020 presidential preference primary. It is then required for every presidential preference primary and general election from that day forward. The risk-limiting audit is a process that is under development with the State Board of Elections at this time. It tests the audit will take a random number of ballots, and what it does, it compares the result of that manual review with the election night totals. It is a process that we will be hopefully implementing as a trial basis after the November election of this year.
Okay, so some random number of machines, that tally will be compared to an actual count of the paper ballots, is
It's
what
an
you're
ac-
saying,
yes.
to make sure that the machine is accurate. So theoretically, if somebody hacked one of the machines,
It would be, we would catch it at the audit.
or if it was malfunctioning in some way.
That is correct. And these
Okay.
audits will be conducted at right now the development is that these audits will be conducted at the city and town level after the election.
After the election. So each city and town might or might not be asked to do it.
They will be involved, yes.
They will be involved. Okay, that's, anything else that's happened recently or is in the works that is designed really to ensure that the vote is accurate?
Well, like I said, we do the test prior to, we have the election day results. Oftentimes we'll do recounts. And the recount also will be a test of the election day ballots. And then going forward, we will have the risk limiting audits.
Okay. There's also been a lot of discussion about what in this state is called a mail-in ballot and then emergency ballots. And in particular, the League has had a number of speakers, and so we're really interested in what do you think about the fact that at the moment the mail-in ballot in the state of Rhode Island does not require a photo ID. It just requires a signature.
That is correct. Now, there is really little difference between a mail ballot and an emergency ballot. The emergency ballot came into function or law because it happens at the last 20 days prior to an election. At the last 20 days prior to an election, a voter may decide that their circumstance has changed, and for U.S. Postal Services, where we would have to mail a voter a ballot if they lived outside of Rhode Island, the chance of getting the ballot back becomes an issue. So there is the regular mail ballot process, and then it goes to the emergency process. The emergency ballot process is all executed at each city and town hall. The question regarding the identification is when the voter submits the mail ballot application to the local community, they are required to check the signature on the application with the last signature on file they have on that voter from their voter registration. They compare it. They also compare the address to make sure that it matches the address that they have on their voter registration record.
Have permanent mail ballot lists where we send out applications for each election to people who may be referred to as shut-ins. Either they can't get out of their home, they're elderly, or they're disabled, and it would be a hardship for them to go to the polls. So many of those people are placed on permanent mail ballot lists or request to be on a permanent mail ballot list, and mail ballots are sent out to them. And, you know, that helps the process and it helps them.
We encourage the mail ballots in Westerly a lot. I mean, especially after the last general election, and we had in excess of 35 questions, you know,
On the
local
charter, yes,
questions.
I know.
And we just foresee, you know, the people standing in line at the polling location, filling out these lengthy 2-page front and back ballots. So we really encouraged people to do a mail ballot or to come in and actually do an emergency mail ballot. An emergency mail ballot, they come right into town hall. They come in, they fill out an application. 9 out of 10 handed me their driver's license, even though it's not required, handed it to me anyway. They fill out their application. I entered it into the system. We had what's called a ballot on demand printer. So we were able to print a ballot right then and there for their particular precinct, printed their ballot, gave them their ballot. They proceeded into our meeting room, filled out their ballot, put it in an envelope, off they went. They were done. They loved it. I mean, this is 21 days prior to an election. They got to come in and vote at any time they wanted. We opened on Saturday and Sunday prior to an election. They came in, voted. We weren't required to, but we did. Like I said, we're trying to really encourage people
To vote.
To vote. And so we tried to make it as easy as possible for them to vote. We sent handbooks to every household in Westerly with an application was in it, a mail ballot application, a voter registration card if they needed to change their address, and an explanation of everything that was on the ballot. And we're prepared to do that. We plan on doing that in the future also.
Does South Kingston?
Well, we did not have 35 questions on our ballot.
No one does.
Goodness. So no, we did not do that. But we will be prepared to do early voting when and if it occurs. We do have the emergency ballot.
But strictly speaking, what's in place in Rhode Island now is not early voting.
No, it's emergency ballots, correct.
Let me just ask your opinion, and if you feel uncomfortable answering it, that's fine. I know the Secretary of State submitted in 2017 legislation to have official early, in-person early voting. It didn't make it out of committee. She's going to submit it again. What do you think about that?
I am in favor of it, wholeheartedly in favor of it. I think that you offer every opportunity that you can to allow the voters to exercise their right to vote. And in-person early voting, they would actually follow the same process, but rather than putting their ballot in an envelope and then having that ballot be brought up to the State Board of Elections, the Board of Elections has to match a ballot with an application and make sure those two signatures match. And then, I'm not sure of the process, but I think it's then once they match, they open those envelopes and the ballots go one place and the envelopes go in another place, so that their vote is counted and not known who it is. But if the in-person early voting passes, we would actually have a voting equipment at Town Hall, and the person would sign their name on the poll pad. We would have an electronic poll pad, sign their name, they'd put their ballot right into the machine. And every night we would wheel that machine into the vault at Town Hall. It would be locked up every night, brought back out every morning, plugged in, verify the numbers, and we'd do that for the 21 days.
The Board of Elections, Cathy is 100% right. These are procedures that will be developed by the State Board, so each of the 39 cities and towns will be following them. The Board of Elections is fully supportive of early voting. It does help the voter because it eliminates the question, did my ballot count or did it not? It also helps the voter if they make a mistake on their ballot. If you have early voting with a machine at a polling city or town hall, where if a voter enters a ballot into a machine that contains a mistake, the voter then has the ability to correct their mistake before they cast their vote. Now, the State Board, just for statistic purposes, in 2012, the mail ballot process was changed. And in 2012, it allowed any voter to be able to cast a mail or emergency ballot without a reason.
Let me just talk about, did the Board of Elections change that rule?
The Board of Elections enforces the rule that is passed by the General Assembly. The General Assembly passed legislation that would change how Rhode Islanders could request a mail ballot and how the mail ballot would be certified and counted by the State Board.
So they eliminated the need to say, I'm in Florida or whatever. That is
correct. There is no excuse. Now, for statistic purposes, in 2014, we received 25,000 mail ballots for the general election in November 2014. For 2016, we received over 40,000 mail ballots.
It's a large number.
A large number. And a large number of those were considered emergency mail ballots, which, when early voting passes, now would be cast at the 39 boards of canvassers.
Okay, how about South Kingstown?
South Kingstown, we have a lot of emergency mail ballots currently, and we will, if and when early voting goes into effect and is adopted, we will certainly be participating willfully.
Hopefully.
We like the willfully.
So let me ask, I'm going to go back to the accuracy of the rolls. The Secretary talked about Rhode Island having joined this ERIC process.
That's
So
correct.
for our viewers, explain what ERIC is and how you think it has been helpful, and are there still some holes? I know that not all the states joined.
That's
I don't know
correct.
how many at the moment, but
Rhode Island has been interested in becoming a member of ERIC for several years, and when Secretary of State Gorbea became elected, she did take the initiative to join the ERIC system. We currently are waiting, if it hasn't happened, for the state of Florida to become a member of the ERIC system, because as you know, many of our voters do go seasonally at least to the Florida area. The ERIC system, it works, the easiest way to explain the ERIC system is similar to the statewide central voter registration system that the state of Rhode Island has. The central system in Rhode Island links all 39 boards of canvassers. When you become a member of ERIC, your state then becomes associated with a participating state, so that if a voter in Rhode Island was to register in one of the ERIC states, Rhode Island is immediately flagged.
and then what happens?
Then they would come off the voter registration roll in Rhode Island because they now have participated in the ERIC system in a different state.
So that would help clean up the rolls and also prevent, I guess, voting in two states.
That's correct.
So what else gets checked in ERIC? So address gets checked.
Address, name, date of birth.
Last 4 digits of the social. So if it's an exact match, they would come off. If it's a possible duplicate, then the local boards are sent during the off year. They're sent a possible duplicate list. It's part of the National Change of Address system that we go through every off year to make sure that our rolls are clean. And then we have to do research, the local cities and towns do research to determine whether or not it is in fact a match and that one of them should come off of the list.
That is correct.
Okay, so how many states are in ERIC
22.
at this point in time?
22.
I didn't hear you.
22.
22. All right, and I assume there's an effort to get every state to
I
join.
believe there is. It's advantageous to do so.
So in essence, is ERIC a nonprofit company? What is ERIC? Who is running that? Who has all that computerized data on all these voters?
I couldn't answer that.
Okay,
I'm not.
No, me either.
all right. Because it sounds like there's some discussion with this last election about having a central registry of everybody at the federal government level, and a lot of states object to that. So I'm just curious, with all this information coming into ERIC, if that is in essence becoming a national repository of voter information.
There is a fee. I do know that there is a fee for the state of Rhode Island to be a member of ERIC.
All right. Any other things that I haven't covered? I'm sure there are many questions that I haven't covered that you think it's really important for viewers to know.
Well, I think that prior to this show, we discussed that the primary election this year is going to be held on September 12th, which is a Wednesday and not a Tuesday due to a religious holiday. So I think it's we should get the word
The word
out on
out.
that so there's less confusion, because I'm sure people are going to be looking for the polls to be open on Tuesday.
True.
Okay, so for 2018, the primary in this state is going to be Tuesday, September.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, excuse me.
September
Wednesday,
12th.
September 12th.
September 12th.
Right.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think the voters should, be rest assured that when they go to the polling place, it is secure. We are offering state-of-the-art equipment with the poll pads and the voting equipment and the voter assistance machine. If they decide they wish to do a mail ballot or emergency, which we encourage voters to participate in, and we do envision that more and more voters will take advantage of this in the future, that the Board of Elections, the Secretary of State, and all the boards of canvassers work diligently to make sure that voting is safe, secure, and fair in the state of Rhode Island.
Very well said.
All right.
Yes.
On that note, I thank you so much for participating in this, and we'll close.
Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Well, that was
Thank
good.
you.
That was quick and easy.
That was an hour?
Yeah, I know, right? It went by fast.
That wasn't it, how was it?
It was 45 minutes, I think.